Hi, I'm Dineshrie Pillay and welcome to the second video on how to overcome failure as a student. In this video, I'm going to share with you 10 techniques of how to overcome failure by a very important principle. And that principle is about acceptance. So technique number 1, what does failure mean to you? How would you define failure? So F stands for failure, but for me, F also stands for feedback. So when I fail on any level, I ask myself, what feedback is this failure giving to me? What can I learn from this failure? And in learning how to overcome that failure, that feedback is telling me to do something differently. So exercise number 1 for you is to define failure in a way that's positive, that has a more successful outcome, that gives you insights versus keeps you in a state of fear. Your second exercise is to go back to those exams that you have failed and ask yourself a simple question. What went wrong? What I would like you to do is to go back and analyze your solution against the exam solution and critically assess for yourself what went wrong. You can only do this objectively once a certain time period has lapsed, maximum a week, between the time that you have got your results confirming that you have failed to the time that you do this exercise. Now, when you complete this exercise, what I want you to be on the lookout for is common mistakes of what contributed to your failure. Did you perhaps misread the question? So your solution went off in a completely different tangent, and as a result, you lost the marks. Number 2, maybe you didn't study that question. Maybe you were spotting for the exam. And so acceptance is like you just didn't study. And so this question came out in the paper and you just weren't ready for it. You could have had just poor exam technique. Maybe when you went back to the solution, you saw that the layout was in a different structure to what you had done. And there were extra marks allocated for that layout or the use of certain language. And as a consequence, you lost those vital marks that could have caused you to pass. Or maybe like myself, in terms of my first video, you were maybe too full of yourself when you wrote this exam. Perhaps you thought that you didn't need to study too much. You got this paper and you underestimated the amount of work that was needed to actually complete this exam. Maybe your time management went a bit wonky. And with an exam paper, you must know, time management is everything. Spending even 1 second, 1 minute longer on a question will cost you marks for a subsequent question. Maybe your style of writing or the way you structured the answer was completely different to what the examiners were looking for. The layout, the structure, something was wrong with that. And finally, maybe there was a calculation error and you misread the question or you did a calculation that was excessive and that costed you marks and valuable time in the exam. Whatever it is, at the end of it, you did not prepare adequately. And what is needed right now is that acceptance that something went wrong and now you need to repeat this paper. By the way, sometimes when you repeat a paper, you may have to pay for it yourself. And I would reflect on that if this is you, because I believe that when you end up paying for things yourself, you'd start taking things a little bit more differently. Maybe your first attempt, you had a bursary, or maybe someone else in your family helped you with that payment of the exam. But when you fail and now you suddenly have to pay for things yourself, you have a very different level of acceptance and accountability. That's point number 2. Number 3, what is needed is honesty, self-reflection, and accountability of what you can proactively do to change the situation. So the action that I'm asking you to do here is to make a list of all those changes you're going to be proactive about, start taking the initiative on, and do things differently in order to prepare for this next exam. Next, board courses and tutorials are there for a reason. So maybe you attended a short course, call it a tutorial, and you paid for that. And maybe what happened and what went wrong is that you had an over-reliance on these lectures. You thought maybe just attending the lectures or this course was sufficient for passing this exam, and you did not actually do any additional work outside of this course. Now remember that any course that you're going to be attending in preparation for your exam, the intention of that is to make you familiar with the content, is to help you highlight the most important areas, and for the lecturer to share their insights as to where you can be guided as a student to focus your studies on. What is still needed outside of this course is for you to actually do additional work and prepare for papers in addition to this course. So maybe you had an over-reliance on this paper, and as a result, that caused you to fail. If this is you, reflect on that, and then again, ask yourself, what action are you going to be doing differently now that you know that this could be a potential area that caused you to fail? Number 5, if you are repeating a paper and now you have failed after 1 or 2 or 3 attempts, in this step, I want you to reflect, what did you do to prepare for your first attempt? What did you do differently to prepare for your second attempt? What did you do differently to prepare for your third attempt? Because here's the principle. If you hadn't changed anything between your first, your second, or your third attempt, and you basically prepared the same way, then clearly there's something that you're missing. You can't be doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Something needs to change. So in this step, I want you to reflect on what did you do for each attempt at this paper and what was missing in all those attempts. Because in that reflection on what was missing, it'll guide you as to what to do differently on this next attempt at this exam. Number 6. This is an important area for me. What is your intention on passing this exam? Why are you studying this particular material? Why is this particular content causing you to fail? What is it about your attitude or the way you are approaching this exam needs to change? Maybe you are just studying this content for the sake of passing, and you're not studying this content for the sake of understanding the principle and the underlying concepts. Because that's really the reason why you are studying to become a professional. Because by understanding the underlying principles, later on it will make you a more rounded professional. So in this step, I want you to reflect on why you have failed this particular content. And what would be the benefit for you as a professional once you understand this concept or this area that you're failing in? Once you get to the grips of this subject, how could this understanding improve your brand as a future professional? And when you understand that link, it'll make you more inspired to go back and studying this particular content. Number 7 is a step on humbleness. It's about humility. When a person behaves arrogantly and they fail and they don't ask for help, people will tend to leave that person alone, thinking that they'll figure life out eventually. But I believe that the more you ask for help, the more help will come to you. So in this step, I want you to look around you in your immediate family or work space or society at large, and find other people who have failed the same exam and have passed. Seek help from them. And when you're asking for help, just don't ask a frivolous question like, so what happened in the exam? What did you do differently? And then sort of leave it there. I want you to get into the detail of what the person did differently, who did they speak to, what course did they go for, when did they study, how did they study, which papers made the most difference, what changed in the exam approach. Just prepare at least 50 to 100 questions. Okay, I know I'm going over the top, but you get my point. I want you to prepare as many questions as possible before you meet this individual to really understand every angle of what that person did differently. Because someone else's success is going to be your points of wisdom on how to overcome failure on this level. So ask specific questions. Arrogance will not get you anywhere. Humbleness, humility, asking for help will bring you the help that you need in this point in your life. Number 8, acceptance is about accepting the emotion that comes with failing. So whatever that emotion is, I want you to get rid of it. If you need to cry, you cry this out. If you want to be upset and be morose for a few days, then be upset. But the key thing here is that that phase needs to be short. Don't have pity parties that go on for months on end. There's a big difference between releasing that emotion versus becoming it. My aim for you is to release that emotion. So don't hold it in. Release that emotion. Get rid of it. Because when you get rid of it, it allows for deeper thinking, a change in perspective, for you to embrace new techniques on your subsequent attempt. So release the emotion, but do not become it. Feel pity, but don't become pity. And most importantly, look after yourself as an individual. It's no use starting to drink and smoke and getting into other addictive behaviors, because that's not going to help you with this failure. That will actually diminish your ability to actually overcome this failure. It will weaken your mind. Any addiction weakens your mind. And what is needed right now is a strong, healthy body and a very strong, focused mind. Number 9. It's a principle called blameitis, justifiitis, excusitis. It's a disease that's out there, and I hope you don't have this disease. And what is needed in the acceptance phase is to stop blaming other people. Stop blaming the company if they didn't give you enough leave. Stop justifying why you didn't pass by saying things like, oh, I didn't have enough time, or there were other things happening in my life at that stage when I wrote the exam. Just stop making excuses in general. Because for everything that you're blaming or you're justifying or you're making an excuse, I can then give you more reasons as to why you didn't take accountability. So, in this step, it's all about letting go of external factors that has played a role in you failing. And it's about accepting that what actually happened is that you did not prepare adequately enough. Because once you delete external factors that could have caused failure, it's easier to take accountability. And this is a very big step. Stop blaming other people. Stop making excuses. Stop justifying. Just accept that you have experienced failure, and now it's up to you to decide what to do about this. And finally, important step number 10. I want you to reflect on how you're describing yourself at this point in your life. Are you saying things to yourself like, I'm useless. I'll never be a success. I'm stuck in a dark hole. I'll never get out. Why do bad things happen to good people? Now, how you're describing the situation that you're going through right now and how you're describing yourself needs to change. How can you become excited and motivated to succeed in this exam if you don't believe in yourself? How can you be inspired to moving yourself forward if you're describing your situation as being in a dark, deep hole? So, in this step, I want you to sort of make a list of how you're describing yourself right now. Because if you don't believe in yourself, how can anyone else believe in yourself? You need to be your biggest advocate right now. You need to be your biggest believer. And when you become that believer in what you are able to achieve, I can take you to that next step, but it's this one step is critical in terms of how you describe yourself. So the action that I want you to do is to simply reflect on the words of how you're describing a situation, how you're describing life, how you're describing yourself, and I want you to change that to something positive. So if you're saying something like, I am useless, say something different. Say, I am a believer in myself. I am adaptable. I am willing to learn from my mistakes. I am going to learn and grow from this situation. This failure is not only a failure in an exam, it's going to help me learn lessons of overcoming failure in life. I am going to show myself how I am going to overcome this failure. So these are some of the ideas that you could use, and you can come up with your own, in terms of how to change the way you describe yourself. And the action from here is on a daily basis. You need to read these new descriptions of yourself and become what it is that you are describing. It's no use just writing on a paper and then leaving it one side. You need to constantly reflect on this so that this becomes your new reality. And the way you describe yourself almost gets deepened at a cellular level where your whole body feels this new energy. Because if you don't do this, I can't get you to that next step. Because like I said, this is as much as a technical exam in terms of understanding the content as it is a mind game. And all of these 10 techniques I've shared with you right now is to help you overcome the mind game. I want you now to complete these 10 exercises, these 10 actions that's coming out of this particular video. And once you do that, then I can take you to the next video in the series of how to overcome failure as a student. And in that video, I'm going to inspire you. You see, I can't get you to start studying again unless you become inspired. So in that video, I'm going to share techniques with you of how to become a little bit more inspired about your current situation. But first, do this exercise, and then I'll see you on that next video. See you then.